10 minutes. That's the world. Would everybody be interested in me talking finally about the economics of practice sales and transitions? A little bit more on what Rob was talking from a financial standpoint. Listen, what I'm going to talk about is not just from practice transition, but even if you're not contemplating selling your practice, it's an investment. It's like your house. You go, well, I just bought the house. I've been here 5 years. Let the roof get messed up. I don't care if it needs a paint job. The shingles are falling off. I'm not planning on selling it for 15 years. No one would do that. So why do it with your practice? So everybody interested in buying or selling a practice has to turn to page 17, because I'm going to give you my secrets over 25 years, what it's all about buying or selling a practice. And again, when I talk about these topics, understand that these deal with management issues that make this investment worth top dollar or bottom dollar. These are 16 items of due diligence. Whenever I have someone that's buying a practice come to me, we go through them. And let me just skip to, for example, we talked about the staff and the staff census. The staff census is what I just got that showed the hygienist at $48 an hour and the 2 assistants in the mid-30s, okay? Boom, big profit. Big problem, rather. I'm going to skip how work and process is. Does the wife work in the practice? Things of that nature. If you're buying a practice, what's key for you is to make sure that support staff is going to remain intact. And a lot of times when the practitioner sells, the wife goes too. So you're not just picking up the transition from the dentist standpoint, you're also picking it up from the wife, who generally is the office manager, does all the accounting, in charge of all the staff, go-to guy. And if he's going to transition out in 2 months, that could be a big problem. So the staff census and the staff is a big part of what you're buying. What are the terms of financing, acquisition, and working capital? That's dealing with Josh and dealing with financing. Right now, the point is that their interest rates are great. And in some small degree, it can affect the price, but not to a large amount. I don't go for that, well, you're going to get 3.9% interest on this financing, so it's only going to be a payment of $6,000 a month. The practice has a cash flow of $13,000 a month. To me, that is a function of the debt service and can affect the practice value a bit, but not to the extent where you will significantly go outside that relevant range simply because the interest rates are lower. The other issue here is key. The area demographics. What is the main thing you're buying when you buy a dental practice? Does anybody know? Patience. Goodwill. Cash flow! Ding, ding, ding to Dr. Turry. Yes, you're buying future cash flow. And yes, that comes from patience. And yes, the accounting statement on that is goodwill. You get 10 accountants to try to describe goodwill for you. You get 10 answers, though. But here's the thing. That's right, but it's the future cash flow. It's the future cash flow. In my guy with the 80% problem, they didn't look at future cash flow. They said, wow, this practice grows $1.2 million a year. Bingo. This is what we're going to do, without taking any thought to what the potential problem could be if that patient base from that one corporation went south. That should have affected that value significantly. Patient base and mix, age of families. Again, the thing you can look at with the dental practice is look at the demographics of the patient base. If you have I'm having dentists that are working longer and longer. I'm working with 2 dentists that are in their 70s that are now deciding to sell. But you want to look at that dental practice and make sure that the patients aren't all in their 70s, okay? You want to make sure that the patient base, he's been bringing in new patients over the years and doesn't have a cash flow of mostly old. Listen, there's nothing wrong. Senior patients are just as profitable as pediatric patients. But the problem is, what's their life expectancy? So you got to look at what the age bracket of the demographics are of that practice. Obviously, the equipment condition is a factor. What I do when I sit down with a practice that I know some of the equipment is somewhat antiquated is that when I'm doing the cash flow, I ask the buyer, what do you anticipate? What's your wish list for equipment purchases over the next 3 years. And I factor that into the cash flow and how that's going to affect the cash flow. Okay, a lot of senior dentists don't like the digital X-ray, things of that nature. So I factor that in, looking at this wish list, to how this will affect the cash flow. Another key component is the facility itself. If a practice is bought and there's 3 ops and one's hygiene, there's not a lot of room for growth. That's fine for some folks. That's fine. But make sure that you know that going in, because if you're going to go out and you're going to lease a place or buy a place and fit it out and plumb it, you're going to spend a couple $100,000 standing on your head. So make sure that the facility provides you with where you want to be as a practitioner. Listen, I have practitioners who have won 3 op offices, have been successful for 20 plus years and had a nice little life and profit. But make sure that's what you want, okay? The lease, critical. Is there an option to buy? What are the terms? In these deals, I want you all to know, I told you there's a relevant range of practice value. And it's not that hard to calculate. But what the problem with the transaction is in the details. The devil is in the details. The lease, the post-transaction terms of what the selling dentist wants to earn and how long he wants to stay. These are where people get caught, okay? From a practice management perspective, what's the accounts receivable? What's the age of the accounts receivable? The accounts payable, same thing. If you got practice B, and listen, I've looked at practice B types for sale. You know right off the bat that the guy has not been managing the practice well. And if he's not managing the practice well, that staff that's going to stay with you afterwards, they're not managing the practice well either. So I tell people, listen, you got to hit the ground running on this one. And one thing people hate is change, even if it's good for them in a lot of cases. So you have to know that if that is the case, you need to accept the fact that over a period of time, we're going to have to get this thing rolling right. And that's going to take time and money, and it's going to give you some stress. The automation issues, Rob talked about the non-compete. Let me just say something about that solicitation. There's solicitation and there's solicitation. Let me give you a direct solicitation. You start sending letters to patients from the old practice. I guarantee if you have a non-solicitation clause in there, you're going to get nailed doing something like that. And he doesn't have to pick every one. He can just pick a few. And trust me, patients will come and go, look what I got from Dr. Jones. Okay? There you got a cause of action. Now what Rob said about the issue of damages is true. Hard to prove, but these attorneys are slick. These liquidating damages provision says this, hey man, I got these letters that you sent to him, and the liquidating damage says if you violate that, you owe me $50,000. You're a dead duck. You're going to owe $50,000, chances are. Okay? Insurance mix and credentialing is something I also get into with my client base. And a lot of times a client will come to me about either taking on a new PPO or dropping a PPO. And what I do is I do a matrix analysis of how much they're getting and how much revenue it's bringing in, et cetera, and what it does to the bottom line. Dental practices are businesses. I do a lot of work in telling a dentist with certain profit centers. What's a profit center in a dental office? Well, it's you as the dentist. It's hygiene. It's possibly to have an associate. And what I can tell you, and I just did this work, because what's becoming very popular out there is general dentists are bringing in endodontists, periodontists, orthodontists into their practices for you specialists out there. And they're saying, hey, you come in here, you need endodontic work? I got the guy. You need periodontal work? I got the guy. You need an orthodontist? He's right here in my office. So I'm doing some work now in terms of dental practices and what it costs to operate that practice per hour. Because these guys are saying we're going to come in for 16 hours a week, and it's not a really difficult computation. And you can see in practice A versus practice B, the cost to operate that practice is significantly different, significantly different. So I always tell a lot of my senior practitioners this. It's called polish the apple. What happens to a lot of senior practices is they get to the twilight of the career and you start slowing down. And I just did an evaluation that went like this. 2010, 1.2 million. 2011, $1,050,000. 2012, $950,000. Now I talked to the guy and he says, I didn't lose any patients. I'm just taking more time off. But listen, no one's going to go with that in evaluation. That is going to seriously affect the value of your practice. Even if you can prove all day long, I had 3,000 active patients and I still do, that's not going to fly. And that practice value took a hit. And I do talk a little bit, I don't think I have time tonight, but bringing an associate and the financial ramifications. But if you're at that twilight, you want to slow down, get an associate, get yourself protected, and bring somebody in, okay? Don't let that gross revenue drop. Also, don't let your equipment get too antiquated. Do something, spruce that. It's just, listen, in a house they call it fixing up expenses. Do the same in your practice, because you don't want to go to the, you don't want to get, I always speak in sports terms, but you don't want to be hitting home runs all the way through 7 innings, and in the 8th and 9th, you start striking out on the practice. You start laying off, employees, things of that nature. Keep the practice active, because the seller's representatives are going to jump all over $1.2 million to $950,000 in 3 years, irregardless of what the issue is. So I hope tonight was informative. And if I could just give you one piece of advice, it's just get with someone that knows what they're doing and get that practice operating efficiently, and don't be practice B. Okay.